Shalom, beloved family. It's your girl Sophia Spiritualite, and we have a thread here we're going to read from Twitter. And this is actually entitled The Corruption of the Tobacco Spirit, a thread. And this is by user at underscore Tolma. Of course, go to Twitter if you want to see this thread directly. So we're just going to read. Let's go. When it comes down to how you are being poisoned in the name of health, one of my favorite topics is tobacco, and it says the corruption of tobacco spirit. All right, this will be a long one, going from the increasing poisoning of tobacco products by government and big tobacco to the spiritual significance of the plant, some of its healing properties, and the subversion of its spirit. You probably know that the regular cigarette or tobacco sold in stores has loads of added additives, and the smoking of these products is in no way the same as smoking tobacco by itself. Around 600 different types of additives are identified. From what I've read, most tobacco products of your well-known brands like Marlboro, Pall Mall, Lucky Strike, Winston, etc., contain between 10 and 50 different additives. A list of some of the most common additives: ammonia, cocoa, cellulose fiber, sugar, sorbitol, artificial sweetener, citric acid, levulinic acid, caffeine, corn oil, glycerol, guar gum, maltodextrin, phosphoric, 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 mm, phosoph I can't say that word, phosphoric acid, and many others. But why all these additives? There are many different reasons given by tobacco companies to make the cigarette, to make the taste better, to prevent the cigarette from burning as fast, to serve as filling, to make the tobacco less dry, to make the smoke less harsh. Often, certain bronch bronchodilators are added so that the smoke enters the lungs more easily. Ammonia also serves the function of making tobacco go to the brain faster. An added benefit for brands is that they can use all sorts of additives to give a more specific taste to their cigarette, thus differentiating themselves in the market. The companies experiment continuously with different combinations of additives to make the taste of the cigarette better and to make a more addictive product. As you can see, look at the ad. All right. I need to remind you that many of these substances are toxins to the human organism and that very often their effects have not been studied, let alone what happens when they are burnt and inhaled. An additional trouble is that this business of additives makes proper studies on the effects of tobacco nearly impossible. If you are smoking tobacco plus 50 different chemicals which have never been tested, how are you going to determine what precisely is what precisely it is blah, blah, what is it is precisely that is causing harm? My bad. And if every brand uses different combinations of additives, how can you make sensible claims about the effects of tobacco? There are as much different tobaccos as there are products. There is no one tobacco anymore. A claim like tobacco causes lung cancer means nothing in the midst of all this confusion. In my reading, this one reason why nicotine natural to tobacco has been singled out as the boogeyman by all anti smoking campaigns. They had to, for it is the only constant in all products. Think about that. It's the only constant thing in all the products, so that's why they blamed it instead of blaming the additives and everything else. It just, well, it's the tobacco. That's the problem. Anyway, on top of this, most cigarettes nowadays use a filter containing plastic. Yes, the plastic is burnt to a degree and enters your lungs. Protect yourself from nicotine by inhaling plastic. Sounds logically right. The usage of additives is a dark business and responsible for the fact that as smoking rates have been decreasing over the past 60 years, the risk of dying from cigarette smoke seems to increase. This was the conclusion of a 2014 report by the Surgeon General. You must think these evil companies making cigarettes more addictive for profit. Yes, very much so. But This is what all companies do in a sense, but what makes the business really evil is how the tobacco companies work together with health ministers around the world. Why do nearly all cigarettes have a plastic filter today? Well, to make the smoke less harsh and filter out some of the tobacco and tar. The first cigarettes with filler were made in 1925 with the use of crepe paper. Some companies sold cigarettes with filters since then, but it was very much a rarity, most tobacco still being smoked without a filter. However, in the early 50s, more and more doctors and scientists were coming and speaking out about the health costs of smoking, linking different diseases of the lungs with smoking, how it irritates the throat, etc. There was a societal and governmental push to make the products less harmful, and the tobacco companies already had a solution, the filter. So basically, they decided, oh, we're going to tell you to use a filter to solve the problem. Essentially, they started using it more widely, and by the 1960s, filtered cigarettes dominated the global market. This is all despite the fact that studies were very much inconclusive at the time. What does that remind you of? Some seeming to establish a link between lesser rates of lung disease and the usage of filters, other not. It is not really clear if they do anything to help you, but what is clear is that m- most filters contain microplastics that you are sucking into your lungs. The filter is a great example of how tobacco products are getting more and more dangerous as a result of the health scares around tobacco products by doctors, scientists, and governments. The companies are forced to come up with ways that can make the product less harmful, and to do so, they make use of additives or techniques that make the product even more harmful. What does that sound like? Another example is adding of additives to make cigarettes burn faster. If you have smoked a commercial cigarette, you know that it burns up in no time, while additive-free cigarette takes time to burn. Why do they do this? Well, if the cigarette is done more quickly, you will be inhaling less dangerous tobacco. This is the reason given by many companies, literally. See how this works? The business of additives really blew up around the same time as the filter thing, the 50s through the 70s, and getting worse as time goes on. Same time as more reports were coming out about the dangers of smoking, cigarettes came to contain more additives. These two things run parallel. This is the same period when arguably health of general population became worse and worse. Fluoridation of water, high fructose corn syrup, increasing vegetable oils in diet, DDT on pesticides, and nuclear testing on U.S. soil. So this is the little ad. DDT is good for me, and of course, whatever that was. All right. So many different things changed in that period that could account for the increasing rates of lung disease. No one is saying inhaling burnt matter 100 times a day is good for you, evidently, but there are a lot of other things that happened in that time period. So, you know this, the problem seems to be solved. You will just stop buying filtered cigarettes and buying and rolling tobacco instead. Not so fast. With most brands of rolling tobaccos, too, contain all sorts of additives, maybe a bit less, but still. You can easily see how the tobacco rolls. Natural dry tobacco is dry and loose, but nearly all commercial tobacco is quite moist and sticky. Why? Again, for your benefit, to make it easier to roll. And you won't suck in pieces of tobacco. Better to inhale some burnt sugar and cellulose fibers than to swallow a tobacco leaf. You have to look for the right brand which still sells tobacco without additives. American Spirit, Mohawk, Pueblo are most known, or grow your own. There, of course, is still the question if tobacco crop is not grown with certain chemical fertilizers, pesticides, etc. But at least you won't have to worry about inhaling burnt sugars. However, the pesticide question is quite important. Perhaps more than any other industry, there's very little to no regulation concerning pesticides when it comes to tobacco. Let's read that back again. There is very little to no regulation concerning pesticides when it comes to tobacco. That is shocking. American Spirit seems to be a good bet. The founder, Bill Drake, is very much aware of all these things and has written books on the contamination of tobacco by pesticides and etc. One of the few brands that takes these matters into consideration. And this is the American Spirit logo, and it has a natural. I'm going to see if I can find that book. Drake also has an interesting blog where he writes on these matters. The man has proposed that if governments really cared about the health of their citizens, they should offer free organic cigarettes to all smoking addicts. You can't say he is wrong. If you're going to smoke, do your own research or grow your own. Again, this is where it gets more interesting. In many European countries, it has become quite hard to find any of these additive free blends in the stores, whereas they used to be widely available only a few years ago. Why? Well, you know how health ministries and the science sort of agrees that tobacco itself, and specifically nicotine, is the harmful agent in smoking. You know that this is not true, but that the additives are just as much a danger. Again, I won't argue that inhaling burnt matter 100 times a day is healthy, but you must be stupid to think that inhaling tobacco is in any case worse than inhaling tobacco plus the 70 chemicals. But if you suppose tobacco and nicotine is the danger, then what is the better product? A blend containing only tobacco, or a blend that contains only little tobacco but mostly synthetic fibers and sugars? Which blend is going to contain more of the harmful substance? Of course, the additive free product is going to have more tobacco and nicotine, and thus health ministries systematically push to take these natural products off the shelves for your health. On top of this, they say that brands advertising products as additive free or organic is deceptive because it creates the illusion that they are therefore more healthy. But they still contain tobacco or nicotine and often much more, and are thus deceiving you. These people are nuts. I think in the US, where many of you are from, you can still buy for X American Spirit in most places, so this might sound strange what I'm saying. I'm speaking only of the European situation, which seems to be much worse in that regard. Oh, and you already know that in many places tobacco companies aren't allowed to advertise and the packaging has to be neutral. Only the name of the brand and disgusting pictures of wounds and all that. Which I've seen that if you go on a cruise, you see that like crazy stuff, man. Like, okay, who called on all the governments to ban advertising and only use plain packaging in 2016? I need to not tell you how the mind influences everything. Convince people that will burn a hole in their throat by smoking, and they will. Perhaps most harmful aspect of smoking today are those packages, no doubt. Strange story on this. I recall some years ago there was a story of a woman who recognized the pictures of her deceased man being used on these packages. She had no idea this was being used. Don't know if it's really true, but it wouldn't surprise me. Scary stuff. I think in Europe, it is some centralized EU instance that issues these images for usage. But where do they get them? By sneaking into hospital and making pictures of sick people? Perhaps. However, I won't be speaking too much about the science. I don't know much about this. I'm no scientist, and there are better people to educate you on this front. What I consider my role to be here is your tobacco phenomenologist. If you have smoked both commercial grade poison cigarettes or commercial rolling tobacco and natural additive free tobacco, you know that there is a difference. Natural tobacco feels more like a clean smoke. There's a certain freshness to the sensation lacking in commercial tobacco. People use tobacco with additives will often describe the natural tobacco as being quite tasteless. No wonder, for it has no added taste to it. It is less of a bodily sensation and more of a clean mental energy. Harsher on the throat too. Commercial cigarette make you feel more in your mouth. Natural tobacco, you feel more in your throat. So again, this is why you smoke it like a cigar. You bring the smoke in, you roll it around your mouth, and you just puff it back out. So, a little bit on the history of tobacco usage now. All right, now we're getting into the fun stuff. As far as we know, tobacco has been used for quite a while. Cultivation sites of this plant have been identified in Mexico dating to 1400 to 1000 BC, and many native populations of the Americas have been using tobacco traditionally. This time period, 1400 to 1000 BC, is actually um not it's got to be further back than that because the Hammurabi Code was written in 2285 BC. So they're probably even further back. Tobacco has even been found in Egyptian mummies dated Dodge the Hijack dated around 1000 BC together with the coca plant, establishing a trade connection between Americas and Egypt, which that's not what that is, as tobacco was probably not native in Egypt. Yeah, because the mummies they found were probably in America, and it is native here. With native populations of the Americas, tobacco is often referred to as the ancient one, and its role as one teacher or a plant to consult. Before a healer would seek to treat a patient, he would first consult the tobacco plant, which would give him greater insight into the needs of the patient. It's not so much a medicine as it is a plant that gives one insight into medicine. In general, tobacco is said to connect one to the great spirit of the universe and to give one greater clarity and insight. This is no wonder, as nicotine has been associated with greater focus and insight. There is a reason that the stereotype of the smoking writer, artist, or the computer programmer nerd high out on nicotine gum and isn't just cultural. It's not just cultural. A lot of different people do it. In all, tobacco is a very Apollonian plant associated with reason, problem solving, clarity, and order. I would say that's probably Enochian, but anyway, it helps one to see the order of the universe, and thus one is better able to guide one's actions. It is a plant that carries one upwards through the head towards the spirit. If you smoke natural tobacco, you feel this. It is a sharp and clear sensation in the throat, immediate activation of the head, and resulting energy of focus. With shamanic traditions, which use psychedelic substances such as ayahuasca, the psychedelic journey is often preceded and accompanied throughout by the smoking of tobacco. The shaman will smoke tobacco and blow smoke on all the participants in the ceremony. The purpose, oh, wait a second, I just thought about that. That's kind of like Jesus blowing the breath of life, the breath of the Holy Spirit onto the disciples. What if he was smoking a cigarette and flew the smoke into their face? All right, let's keep on. The purpose of this is to offer spiritual guidance throughout the Ayahuasca ceremony. Ayahuasca is a very earthy, feminine, and Dionysian energy to it. Often referred to as Mother Ayahuasca, connecting one to the Divine Mother, is the substance of the body, the emotions, and the earth. The more logical energy of the tobacco is thus added to guide one through this chaos. I won't say that. I can't even pronounce that word. Tobacco acts as a mediator between humans and God, protecting the user from negative energies and keeping his mind set on the divine order, a spirit to guide one through the chaos of the unconscious. As you can see, the snake there. For many peoples of the Amazon region, tobacco has been a place in their conception of life, as tobacco is conceived as a masculine energy of fire and air, a yang energy, you could say. It is used to balance with the yin aspect of reality. All life originates from the fertile earth and the divine feminine principle associated with earth and water. When I saw this picture, it made me think of like all this discussion of like the inner earth, and you bury people when they die, right? So maybe everything that we're living on is literally like the people that were buried from the inner earth, perhaps. Anyway, to progress from mere biological life to physical life, this feminine energy must be accompanied by the masculine energy associated with reason, structure, responsibility, and clarity of mind. In this way, tobacco is important in many original rites of passage to help youth make the passage from a biologically oriented, sensuous life to this life of reason. Tobacco opens up the soul to the life of spirit. Fire and air is blown into matter, and man becomes opened up to the transcendent. Imminent life is made into transcendent being. Tobacco connects earth to sky. There's also the phenomenon of a tobacco test in certain peoples. Youth are made to smoke enormous amounts of tobacco and to see if they are fit to become shamans in the future. If they endure without negative symptoms such as vomiting, they might be fit. This the idea here the idea is that one can endure the enormous dose of tobacco, one is probably also able to endure the higher physical realms. What I want to draw attention to with the traditional association of tobacco with the principles of fire and air as the masculine reasonable principles as opposed to the feminine principles of matter and water. It is the spiritual and reasonable principle that comes to infuse the material and the psycho emotional complex. It is mind that enlivens the body. Mothers give, fathers order. Maybe. Strength, mental clarity, purification, protection, and access to spirit. These are the functions of tobacco. Listen. Strength, mental clarity, purification, protection, and access to spirit. These are the functions of tobacco. So whatever else these people use it for, those are not the functions. Those are the functions. Whether you believe in these spiritual significations or not, if you have experience with smoking clean tobacco, you must recognize that these characterizations will fit the experience quite well. What I want to propose is that the poisoning of tobacco by additives, etc., has distorted the effects of the tobacco to a large degree, corrupted its spirit. So, again, when you have a corrupted spirit, you're just going to leave it corrupted, or you're going to try and right the wrong. You know, what do you do when you wield the power, when you run the kingdom, What do you do? You let it keep being corrupted once you find out, or you go in there and you figure out how to right the wrong. So that's just something to think about. All right. Tobacco is supposed to be an energy that connects one to the higher realms of the mind, to the spirit, and thereby to purify from one from excessive association with the material, but it has become, in fact, a vehicle for attracting one stronger to the material. The clean and sharp energy of tobacco, purifying the body and activating the tip of the head, has become a soft energy, no longer rising up through the head, but putting one more into the body, not in the sense of positive embodiment, but in the sense of twisted attachment. Tobacco is a clean substance, and in a sense, it is meant to purify and activate those aspects of one's being that transcend the body. Also cleanses the digestive system, has an has anti-parasitic properties. The substance does not so much feed you as that it cleans you. Here we go. It is a plant given by the gods to detox you from excessive attachment to the material realm. Wow. But with the adding of sugars, synthetic plant fibers, plastics, gums, oils, and what else? The tobacco experience is much different. It is no longer bitter and sharp, but sweet and full. It no longer just activates the brain, but it feeds and poisons the body. It no longer basically is turned evil. It no longer seems to or infernal, right? It no longer serves to cleanse one from poisonous attachments to matter, but enhances these attachments. This is because a lot of more food-like additives have been added, sugars, plant fibers, etc. It no longer cleans the system but clogs it up. In all, tobacco is no longer the principle of air and fire that gives order to the chaos of the material. It has become itself a vehicle of matter to sow even more confusion. No longer a tool to balance material existence with spiritual, but a tool to sow even more imbalance. No longer cleaning you from poisons, but in fact poisoning you. One could say that tobacco is no longer just a masculine spirit, but has come to include the aspect of the earth to a larger degree. No longer a sacrament to connect one to a greater spirit, but a substance to sever this connection. If you have smoked both natural tobacco and tobacco with additives and you have some awareness of how things affect you, you can feel this difference quite clearly. Natural tobacco has a strong energy of order and clarity, very stimulating too. A good hit from a strong natural tobacco gives one the strong feeling, very much like cocaine, tense in the face. No wonder the coca plant is associated with tobacco and were found together in the mummy. Like many natural products, their poisoning has made man imbalanced and disconnected from natural equilibrium. In general, it seems this direction is enhancing the material, something, and sensuous aspect of existence, and forgetting the reasonable and spiritual. The great mother is left alone, as great father has left. She begs for being, but she does not receive it. She grows sickly, distorted, and she becomes poisonous. That's what happens when we don't wield the demons, too. Smoking has long been a practice men engage in. You can see why if you accept the traditional meaning of tobacco as a masculine energy. But with the corruption of tobacco, there's a certain emasculation of the substance taking place. As you can see by this emasculating pictures here. What is supposed to be something that balances the masculine and feminine by aiding the strength in the strengthening of the first has now become a confused energy. All right. In Western parlance, all of this is separation from logos and in the name of lower reason and health. All right. He's talking about what else he could talk about. Let's see. Last one. If you know people who smoke the corrupted commercial tobacco, perhaps share this with them. Fight the poisoning of man. I hope this has been informational for everyone. Very, very interesting read for me. And we'll be looking into this further. So, the spirits who are here with us, you're invited to go in peace. To my beloved viewers, you're invited to be at peace. And always remember, the Most High is your peace. Shalom.